Good morning, everyone. Lots of news going on yesterday. Lots of stories that I'm following have updates, and there's some weird, one-shot things that I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about, but I think that it's worth mentioning. So the first big piece of news is Nova Scotia Premier Stephen Mcneil is to step down after 17 years in politics. And so this is CBC reporting. They say 17 years, or he says 17 years is a long time, he said, at media availability that was broadcast live following a cabinet meeting, and it's long enough. Mcneil said he had made the decision to resign prior to the coronavirus pandemic, but he reconsidered when the virus arrived in Nova Scotia in March. Mcneil said he will continue to act as Premier and Liberal Party leader until the party chooses a replacement. He said he expected a leadership campaign to take months. Nova Scotia does not have fixed election dates, but is due for an election by 2022. So it'll be automatically triggered by 2022, and if not before that. And changing the leader, he's got a majority, so the people will probably just fall in line. That probably won't trigger an election. So we'll see. But interesting, right? Interesting timing. Back to this. The long-serving politician is in his second term of a majority government. He said he feels 2 terms is long enough for one person to hold that responsibility and for the province to have the same leader. It's interesting timing because of the crisis of COVID and the shooting, the Nova Scotia shooting, the worst one in Canadian history, right? Very odd timing to be like, been doing this too long. I gotta go. Time for an inexperienced, fresh leadership, fresh eyes, and maybe he's got a point. The crises are not happening, or COVID anyway is not his fault. And who knows what the rest of the political battlefield looks like in Nova Scotia with regard to the RCMP, with regard to the connection to the feds, with regard to who knows, right? So maybe it is time to go. Who knows? He would be the person who knows. And he says, time for new leadership. Interesting. Coming to that conclusion, I guess you could see it. Time to spend time with family. And then, like Scott Bryson, take a big corporate job with BMO on Valentine's Day. I got to spend more time with my wife and kids. Wait a month and then big corporate job. Mark Norman. Now, yesterday I reported that no investigation took place. I said the RCMP didn't pass over to the OPP the investigation due to an oversight. That's what the newspaper said. Here's an article published yesterday with a different take on it. Apparently, military police couldn't find enough evidence to lay charges. And this is with regards to a brigadier general who was mistyping Norman's name, misspelling his name, or using specific code names, nicknames, to refer to Norman. And this was in an effort to shield his name from freedom of information requests, right? So if you asked for Mark Norman, you'd get a nil result, and he was quite happy to supply that nil result. So that's what this is an investigation into. And well, this is what they said. Military police investigated allegations that a general tried to hide documents related to the Mark Norman affair, but couldn't find enough evidence to lay any type of charge. But how the Canadian Forces National Investigation Service came to its conclusion can't be explained, as the organization refuses to provide even basic details, such as how long the investigation took or how many officers were assigned to the case. But this newspaper has confirmed that through various sources that the CFNIS never talked to Vice Admiral Mark Norman, who is at the heart of the case. And it goes through the whole thing here. I thought that it was interesting how they characterized the brigadier general. Hold on, let me find it. This is it here. It says, the CFNIS was called in to do its investigation after a pretrial hearing from Norman heard testimony in December 2018 that a brigadier general had come up with a scheme to hide records concerning the naval officer. And this attributes the scheme to this brigadier general, but there's been other examples of this. The Corney example. So Jim Comey was spelled Corny. So if you were to print it, it would look very similar, right? Like you could even adjust the space between letters so it's even closer together. But if you were to print it, it looks like Comey if you're expecting to read Comey, right? But if you were to search for it, nothing would come up. And other tricks. So I think it's not great that the news is saying, oh yeah, this is his scheme, because this is a trick that's being used to circumvent freedom of information and transparency laws by the people who are representing this transparent liberal government, right? The people in the upper echelon of this liberal government, right? These are Vance's people. These are the people who are supposed to be dutifully carrying out these responsibilities for the Canadian public, right? So it seems really, really frustrating to not at least acknowledge that this isn't some rogue brigadier general. This appears to be a tactic used by Democrats, at least. I don't know about Republicans, maybe, probably, why not, right? Like, they all seem to be globalists, except maybe one prominent Republican who occupies the White House currently, right? Everybody else is globalist. He's not. And wonder why people and the press don't like him? Shocking. Okay. Here's one of those stories that I'm kind of, it sideswiped me a little bit. I was like, where did this come from? Mercedes Stevenson says, on allegations a Saudi kill team tried to enter Canada, Bill Blair's office said, quote, while we cannot comment on specific allegations currently before the courts, we are aware of incidents in which foreign actors have attempted to monitor, intimidate, or threaten Canadians and those living in Canada. My question, did Cabinet know about this when Canada decided to resume LAV shipments to Saudi Arabia? Now, this is Canada builds and sells weapons to Saudi Arabia, and this has been a bone of contention for a while, especially considering, the Kogashi, whatever, and that whole thing, the tweet or diplomacy by tweet from Freeland, she insulted people, blah, 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 all that stuff that happened, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, before the election, 2018, I think. And it's all kind of circling back. So, man, what is going on in our country where Saudi kill teams are intimidating people in Canada and Bill Blair's outlawing AR-15s? Like, man, it seems just crazy. Now, this was going to be my lead story, and I realized, I'm like, okay, 7 minutes in. This was going to be my lead story. Trump is imposing tariffs on Canada, again, the aluminum tariffs, and I've got stuff to show you about that. But this is an interesting speech by Trump. I've got 3 time indexes to show you, just so we don't watch the whole 2 minutes here. But here we go. The first 20 seconds is important. This is Trump announcing how much he loves tariffs. Here we go.
My 5th promise to American workers is to bring back American jobs and factories using every tool at my disposal, including tariffs. I love properly put on tariffs because they bring unfair competitors from foreign countries to do whatever you want them to do.
Trump's all about making a deal by hook or by crook, right? Whatever you want him to do. Here's the next one here, I think.
Today I signed a proclamation that defends American industry by reimposing aluminum tariffs on Canada. Canada was taking advantage of us, as usual. And I signed it, and it imposes, because the aluminum business was being decimated by Canada, very unfair to our jobs and our great aluminum workers. 7 months ago, my administration agreed to lift those tariffs in return for a promise from the Canadian government that its aluminum industry would not flood our country with exports and kill all our aluminum jobs, which is exactly what they did. Canadian aluminum producers have broken that commitment, and the U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has advised me that this step...
And so tariffs are in play. But here's the thing. Here's Glenn, and he says, how many Canadians know that we don't actually mine aluminum ore? Bauxite? Sorry, I've got that wrong. In Canada, all ore is imported. The question then becomes, how can Canada be dumping aluminum into the USA when Canada doesn't actually produce the raw material? Worth further investigation. And this is in response to Justin Trudeau announcing tariffs, countermeasures. Here's the MPs demanding countermeasures, according to Blacklock's reporter Holly Doan. She says, MPs, unions want pushback. Canadian government must respond with retaliatory tariffs. So the implication here is, if we're not mining the aluminum, where are we getting the aluminum? And we're getting it from China. So China is bypassing trade restrictions by brokering aluminum through Canada, right? Through Canadian companies. And this is, I've talked about this a lot before. This is Project Sidewinder. This is China buying influence in Canadian companies, having the facade of being Canadian owned, and you don't even see the Chinese connection, right? And so the problem is for Trump that Canada didn't abide by its promise of not flooding the market with aluminum. So in order to protect his workers, he's putting on the tariffs. And now the last thing that you want to have happen is to have a country like Canada going into a trade war with a country again like the United States, because Canada isn't even as big. If we went into a trade war with New York State, we might win. Like, we might have enough clout. But fighting the United States, they're 10 times as big as us. I think we have 37 million. They have 300 million people, right? I think that's roughly maybe 500 million people. That's right. I'm not going to Google it right now. I'm just very rough. But you don't win a trade war like that in an economy like that. They can get everything they get from Canada from themselves. Like, I know that we see MPs calling for retaliatory whatevers, but I think that maybe you should abide by the promise you made to our most historic trading partner. That's what I think probably that they should have done, and that this didn't need to happen. This was again bad leadership, not following through with a promise made, and especially with somebody like Trump. Why would you do that unless you think that he's not going to be a factor? But have you seen Biden? I mean, it's very clear that he's struggling. It's very clear that he's not all there, right? Watching him talk about anything, it doesn't look like he's got a point. It doesn't look like he's got a story from beginning to end. It's like watching somebody say words that vaguely sound like they should be together, but they're not really sure where they're going next. They're like, oh, are they gonna go completely off the rails, or are they gonna finish this sentence? Whereas I can respond to them, or the person who's interviewing them can respond to them with a rational thought. It's really, I mean, watching Joe Biden decline, because it wasn't too long ago that he was, introducing Barack Obama and very kind of nimble on his feet, talking about Poroshenko and intimidating the Ukrainians. Right? He's right there. He was very sharp, and then he's not anymore, and you can see it. His eyes are vacant, right? Like the pictures of him are like he really doesn't know what's happening, and that's sad. You can't do that to somebody. That's awful that he's being paraded around like that. So I'll be interested to see if he actually debates. I don't think he will. I'll be interested to see if he's actually the nominee. At this point, I don't think he will. I think that they're going to have to put somebody else in, and I don't think it's going to be Bernie. Okay, I'm way off topic here, but it doesn't matter. Canada to retaliate dollar for dollar after U.S. slaps 10% tariff on aluminum. I don't think it's going to work. I mean, maybe a little bit, but I don't think it's going to work. Ottawa will impose retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods in response to President Donald Trump's decision to restore a 10% tariff on Canadian aluminum imports. Freeland, in a statement, said Canada intends to swiftly impose dollar-for-dollar countermeasures in response. Actually, all she said was intends to swiftly impose dollar-for-dollar countermeasures. The Freeland statement and in response, that's all the news. Okay. Quote, Canada aluminum does not undermine U.S. national security. Canadian aluminum strengthens U.S. national security and has done so for decades through unparalleled cooperation between our two countries, she said. Trudeau said, we will always stand up for our aluminum workers. We did so in 2018, and we will stand up for them again now. And there's more to the story, but I'm not going to read any of it because that's the too long didn't read, basically. They didn't follow through, and now they're trying to blame Trump for being a meanie. Is it going to work? Maybe. There's a lot of people who want to believe Trump's a meanie. In further railroading of and distractions for the WE scandal, which we'll get to in just a minute, here's Payette, and she is currently in the media for being demanding for her office renovations, which I think is really odd. Here's the CBC News article. August 6th says more than $250,000 spent on Governor General Julie Payette's demands for privacy at Rideau Hall. Oh no. CBC News has learned new details about costs the public is incurring to meet Payette's requirements before she agrees to move in. They include, she hasn't moved in yet, they include almost $140,000 spent studying and designing a private staircase that was never built, and more than $117,000 on a gate and series of doors to keep people away from Payette's office, according to National Capital Commission, NCC, which manages the office vice-regal residence. Those costs go well beyond the usual transition expenses, which normally involve some fresh paint and new furniture, according to multiple sources with knowledge of the project. Those sources asked for confidentiality because they're not authorized to publicly discuss Rideau Hall's requests. Okay, except that here's Pierre Poilievre saying on July 8th, no new money for the Auditor General, but $15 million in new money for Chrystia Freeland's office. Now, I couldn't find a news article about this. I think that's probably just because they just plumb forgot to write one. Isn't that convenient? And here's another one. Renovations to Cabinet Minister's office cost $1.6 million over the past 4 years. So, okay, Cabinet Ministers get $1.6 million, but $250,000 for the Governor General is what did they call it? Well beyond the usual transitional expenses. Okay, I guess so, except that, like, that's not really true, right? Like, facts show that to be not true. So, what is the usual money? $500,000? 800,000? Like, I think there's more articles. There was an article about Patty Haydu having to, who was the minister? She was a minister and then she had to leave, but she didn't want to leave the office because there was so much in renovations. I'm going to have to go look for this. Okay, I found two more, and it was Haydu. It was Patty Haydu who got these, who got the renovations. So here's Minister Sohi, and this is June 14, 2016. So under liberal rule, 835,000 for office renos set for evening debate. So they're going to debate it, and the Conservatives didn't want to do it. Whatever. Obviously, I had the article about that. Here's Patty Haydu. Status of women minister spent 1.1 million on new office despite internal warning. So yeah, I mean, $250,000. You greedy lass, you former astronaut. What do you want, man? An weightlessness container, right? Like one of those. Joe Rogan has them. What are those things called? Man, $250,000. How dare you? Greta eyes, right? Come on, really? The status of women minister gets 1.1 million, and everybody's like, yeah, that's fine. $250,000 for the Governor General. How dare you? Here's Paul Madison says, wow, I lived and worked at Rideau Hall for 2 years as an ADC to Jean Sauvé. Her privacy on the second floor was respected. On the main floor, she was accessible, engaged, and dedicated to her staff, including the RCMP. The dysfunction described here is alarming. And this is the CBC article I think I was just showing you. $250,000. Oh my goodness. Here's Jim Pablo. I don't know who Jim is. He doesn't have a whatever, but he says if Adler's calling for her removal, then she's probably being set up and railroaded. I retract any former tweets until I commit more due diligence. Where is her friend Garneau in all this? Hope he will not desert her if indeed she's being smeared. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a weak smear too. I really don't think they have a lot. Like, this is the worst thing that she's done. My good, and you haven't moved in yet? Oh my goodness. Awful, terrible. Get her out, right? Like, it seems like a distraction. It seems like a liberal distraction. What from? What could they be distracting from? Here's new We news, and I know like this should be leading. All of these should be leading stories. I think the We, there's everything here for the Payette thing because it's a distraction. Anyway, We Charity, the national firm, would have managed the scholarship program in Quebec. You know, the program. We is the only group that could deliver it Canada-wide. The only group, except they're not bilingual. What? The only group that could do it can't possibly do it in one whole province? One big, very populated province? The French province? Justin Trudeau, man. It's so hard to believe anything that comes out of this government. The only entity in Canada that could possibly deliver this is unilingual and owns a whole bunch of property on Queen Street. Yes, that's exactly right. We want you to believe that, straight-faced, and I'm going to say that a bunch until it comes out that it's absolute bullshit. Okay, here it is. Having no presence in Quebec, the charitable group We Charity has entrusted the national public relations firm with the mandate to implement the famous Canada Scholarship for Student Volunteering, BCBE. This is translated from French, so apologies for that. In the Bell province, before the political storm caused by the close ties between the federal Liberals and the organization in question aborted the project. According to information obtained by La Presse, the national firm also had the mandate to implement the controversial program, which had an envelope of up to $900 million in francophone communities in the rest of the country. We Charity, UNIS in French, being an essentially unilingual Anglophone organization, UNIS gave National this mandate on May 29th, just 1 week before the federal cabinet decided to award it a non-competitive contract to manage the scholarship program. So that's concerning, isn't it? Right? Here's the post-millennial doing their bit on this. PR firm that would have administered We Quebec contract has extensive liberal ties. So not only can we not deliver the program in Quebec, the group that they chose to deliver the program in Quebec has deep liberal ties. Here we go. Thanks for the post-millennial for doing this legwork. The public relations firm that would have administered the $900 million government program on behalf of the We Charity in Quebec, because they couldn't do it, had extensive connections with Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party. The We Charity does not run programs in Quebec. As a result of this, they appointed National, a PR firm based out of Montreal, to administer the contract in the province. The PR firm has a deeply complicated organizational structure. Having said that, numerous professionals who either work for the National or have worked for the subsidiaries have connections to the Liberal government. Melanie Joly, for example, who serves as Justin Trudeau's Minister of Economic Development, was appointed as the managing partner of the Cone and Wolf in 2009. Yeah, it says that I think that the is not right, but it should maybe it doesn't really matter. The firm is owned by the same company that owns the national firm. Minister Joly has not disclosed these connections to the public. As well as this, Ali A. Salam, who served as the national senior vice president of public affairs, was employed as the chief of staff to various ministers within the Trudeau government between 2016 and 2018. I scroll down. The fact that a PR firm was chosen by the We Charity to administer this contract raised some eyebrows. The federal director of the Canadian taxpayers, Aaron Werdick, said that the only entity that had the capacity to run this national program had to itself outsource it to another entity in the country's second largest province, which is essentially the point I was making earlier. And I probably got it from right there. But man, like, it's pretty obvious that that's not the only entity that could do this, because they couldn't do it in the first place, right? Like, and that's hilarious. Here is yesterday, Charity Intelligence was testifying at the Finance Committee. Here's Pierre Poilievre talking about that. He says, Charity Intelligence testified at Finance Committee that in all its research, it could find no examples of We previously delivering a massive student volunteer program like the CSSG. So why did the Trudeau government claim it was the only group that could deliver the program? Because they couldn't deliver the program. Very, very clearly. Here's Paul Vieira, and he's the Washington Journal. It's Wall Street Journal, Ottawa correspondent. He says, at Canada's parliamentary hearings, charity watchdog Charity International says it was able to do its due diligence through regulatory filings. Canada's Tory legislator making case it stretches credulity that officials couldn't find the same information about We Charity. Very true. And here, the point is, Charity Intelligence has 4 staff, and they were able to find the broken bank covenants, the problematic issues with We, the financial trouble that they were in. There should have been red flags to indicate that this was not a good company to park $1 billion with, but the public service didn't do the due diligence or didn't care. Right. And that's the point that I think is being made. I still think that without a police investigation, without more than this, I don't think that this is going to bring the government down. I don't know if the Tories, if the Conservative Party is talking with the Bloc and the NDP to force a confidence vote in order to trigger an election. I don't know that an election would return a different government. So, I mean, it's very interesting, because who knows? Everybody knows something untoward happened here. They should not have got this contract. There's other contracts that have gone to Canadian companies that don't have Canadian factories. That SNC is now building the Canadian factory. It looks like it's all bankrolled by the Liberals, right? So we all know something untoward's gone on here. But if an election's triggered, will the electorate care about this issue at poll time? Who knows? And the longer things are kicked down the curb, the longer things are drawn out, the more time is put between the public learning about this and the public learning about the next bombshell within this, then the less accountable they need to be held, because the public forgets. The public moves on. The public is distracted by COVID-19. Here's something that's interesting. The Canada-China Committee just passed my motion to summon John McCallum to testify before the committee. He declined to testify, but now he will have to. So McCallum was called to testify. Here's a whole article on it. I'm not going to go through it, but there's a link in the description. And basically, it says the same thing here. I just wanted to provide a link to an article. It's notable because he declined to testify, and now he's being compelled to testify. He doesn't want to. That's going to be interesting. But again, a scandal every couple of months is, I don't know. It's not doing much. It's not doing much for shaking this government, and it's a minority government, but it doesn't feel like one. Here's an interesting, Navdeep Bains is the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, and this is him talking about mandatory vaccines. And, well, here we go.
And Minister Haidu to determine when we get to that stage how to proceed. With regards to making it mandatory, keeping it voluntary, that's something that we'll closely work with Dr. Tam and Minister Haidu to determine when we get to that stage how to proceed. As you raised, is it mandatory or voluntary? That's something that I will continue to work very closely with in terms of conversations with my colleague Minister Haidu as well as Dr. Tam. With regards to
I wonder what's with the hand movements. Like, what's with the... You don't think about doing it when you're talking like that, but there's something there. I don't know. And the whole making it mandatory, I think, goes against our basic charter rights. I don't think they can make it mandatory. I don't think that would stand up to a charter challenge unless the court is completely corrupted. You have religious exemptions. You have all sorts of different exemptions. I don't think there's a reasonable argument to be made for injecting a Chinese military-made experimental vaccine that had been rushed to compel the population of Canada to take it. Now, this is interesting. This is they're floating unethical studies to prove a vaccine candidate works. This is Oxford scientists push for COVID-19 challenge trials in effort to end pandemic sooner. So they're going to intentionally infect 40 people with COVID-19 because they can't find 40 people who have COVID-19, apparently, I guess. And so intentionally infecting these 40 people with COVID-19 and then giving the potential vaccine and then giving a placebo to see, if it definitely works. It seems completely unethical to me. And why aren't we using hydroxychloroquine and zinc again? What's the reason we're completely ignoring all of these doctors who keep coming out and then being silenced by big tech that keep saying hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine works? Like, I just don't get it. I'm going to end on this today. This is in Guelph. This is the the Wellington Catholic Board, and the Wellington Catholic Board chair stepped down for saying racist things. And we don't know what he said. His apology said that his words were not intended to be racist, here's the apology. So he said that he didn't intend for his words to be racist, but he understands that he hurt people's feelings and he's stepping down. I think that it's notable because as the public, we don't get to see what he said. It says, on my personal Facebook page, I recently posted some items that members of the community found offensive. They were not in any way intended to be, or to reflect the views or opinions of the Wellington Catholic District School Board or the Board of Trustees. On reflection, I realize and acknowledge that posting these items was a serious error in judgment, for which I take full responsibility and am profoundly sorry. Okay, so we're not allowed to see what he posted. We have to believe that it's racist enough for him to have to leave his position as chair of the board. And it stinks. It stinks to me because, we've got the Upper Grand District School Board being openly racist and board trustees speaking in a very anti-white way. And if they were speaking in an anti-black way or an anti-brown way or an anti-Asian way, that would be not tolerated. Why is it tolerated with speaking about whites in a negative way? I don't understand it. And I'm a first generation Canadian, right? Like sure, my skin is white, but my grandparents, my dad learned English in Toronto. So, I mean, I think that it's very tone deaf, this hammering on skin color for any reason at all. I think that skin color should be secondary to the person that you are, right? Like your person, your character, the content of your character, to paraphrase Dr. King, should be more important than the skin that you're in. And these critical race theory proponents, these people who are putting it forward, these people who want to be hiring for skin color and want to stamp out all racism, but are putting forward racist policies. And the fact that we're not, as a public, even allowed to know what he said, what he posted, and we have to just believe them that it's racist. I just don't. The media and the celebrities are following the Black Lives Matter lead, but Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization, and nobody's talking about that. Some people are talking about that. Some people put videos and stuff up, but most people mindlessly chant or put up Black Lives Matter, blah, blah, blah. And it is a concerning situation when these Marxist organizations are getting school boards and other groups to start judging people by their skin color to fall in line with the expectations of that Marxist organization. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't feel right to me. It doesn't feel like that's what we should be doing. And I don't understand why I do understand. I of course understand why the media is going along with it, because the media is not meant to be telling us what's going on right now. It's meant to be getting us in line with what they want us to believe. And it's just very concerning. If you're not concerned about this, man, in 5 years, it's going to be a lot worse. And I don't know how to stop it. I don't know how to do anything more than what I'm doing. So, and I've gone long already. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful